when we use the formula in CVP analysis, we have to assume that the analysis is only valid for limited range of activity. Okay, because when you calculate BEP, let's say, you calculate the formula for BEP is actually FC divided by CM, and the CM is SP minus VC. So when you use this formula, you assume that the SP is constant, the VC is constant. So in reality, all these costs might change. So that's why we assume that you can use this formula only for a limited period of time. Okay, for a short period. So in long term, the fixed cost might change, SP also change, and VC also change. So in order to assume that this is constant or doesn't change, you have to only use it for a limited period of time. Okay. Now, because of limited period of time, you have to assume that the SP is constant. Okay, the SP is constant. The variable cost and fixed cost also can be separated accurately. In reality, we just assuming that in this analysis we only have a fixed cost and variable cost, but in reality we have step cost and mixed cost. Okay, so means that if to use this analysis, you have to assume that you can accurately identify how much the fixed and how much the variable. Okay, and then the variable cost will change proportionately with volume. Okay, if you produce 1 unit, the variable cost is 2 ringgit. 2 unit, 4 ringgit. But in reality, sometimes you can reduce the variable cost because of maybe you buy in bulk. So the supplier give you a commission. But that one we can look at in the limitation later. Okay. Now the fixed cost remain unchanged. Let's say your rental is 10,000. So you have to assume that the rental doesn't change within a month or within a year. So it's remain constant. Okay. Technology and production method and efficiency remain unchanged. But in reality, the technology, the efficiency might reduce your variable cost. So it will affect your contribution margin later on. But don't mind, for this analysis, we assuming that the variable cost doesn't change because we expect that the technology, the efficiency is remain unchanged. Right? In using this formula in CVP, we assume that either a single product is produced, or if there is a mixture of product, the range of product will be accordant with the predetermined sales mix. Okay, let's say you already assume that the mixture of cocoa, milk tea, and vanilla previously. So the cocoa is half, the sale for cocoa is half of it, and you assume that this sales is constant throughout the year. Means that the demand for cocoa is 50% throughout the year. So in reality, it's very difficult. Sometimes people like to change their flavor from cocoa to milky, vanilla, and etc. Right? So again, this is assumption, and of course there is a limitation of it. So the whatever assumption here, it will be a limitation. Okay. For example, the analysis is valid for limited range. That's why the limitation is that CVP analysis cannot cope with activity level that below or above the relevant range. So let's say this we can use for this analysis can be used for production of 50,000. So if you produce more than 50,000, so this assumption is no more relevant. You have to change the cost, and you have to change the FC's VC. Yeah. Okay. Or you can use only for a short period. So if more than a year, so this assumption is no more relevant. So it's not suitable for a period that is more than 1 year. Okay. And this analysis only gives satisfactory result only if the price remain unchanged. So that's why we have to assume that it remain constant. Okay. As I mentioned to you, in this analysis, we just assume that we only have a fixed cost and variable cost. But in reality, we have a mix and step. So that's why they say here, separation of mix is hardly can be done. So that is a limitation. Alright. Again, whatever assumption here is the limitation here. I hope that you can go through by your own. And if you have any queries, you can ask the lecturer. Thank you so much.